I was a bit surprised to see the topic of the show this week because I'll be honest, I just fully expected us to be talking about this Harper's letter for like an entire show.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about.
Far out, isn't there just?
Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of Because Language, a podcast about linguistics, the science of language. My name's Daniel Midgley. Let's meet the team. He doesn't like very many things, and you love him for it. It's Ben Ainsley.
I will accept that lead-in.
That was very good.
I've got to say, I don't mean to get all mushy, but I feel very seen right now.
Yeah.
She's trying all the immature things she can, and she tells herself it's because she's finally given herself permission to define what adulthood means to her.
Oh! That's too close!
But it's actually just a cover for her postdoctoral infantile regression.
Oh my god.
It's Hedvig Kiergaard.
Oh, wow. Let's play the new game where Daniel just insults people by telling the truth.
Wow.
This is great.
It's not insult, it's just kind of on-the-nose introduction.
Woof. That's all I can say. Woof.
That was, I mean, I have looked up a hairdresser here in Leipzig for getting a mullet.
Oh, wow. We want photos.
I haven't been yet, but I'm very seriously considering it, yes.
Oh. Why a mullet?
I would tell you not to, but I know that will only calcify your resolve.
That's not helpful.
You should definitely do it. I think all of the 14-year-old pimpled boys who have them at my school are very fetching.
Really? They're coming back?
Oh, you know, there's like a cool like Eastern German look where you like cool synth music and you have a mullet and you're very like you have a septum piercing.
Mullet is very, very, very in amongst football players in Australia and thus teenage boys in Australia.
It all just feels a bit de-ontward to me. You know? I don't know.
It's not that cool, like in the way that it's happening in Australia. I'm sure Hedvig's dead on the money. In Europe, I'm sure it is very, very cool. But
it's cool on girls. Like if it's done right on girls.
Yeah. No, see, it's a male thing over here.
Yeah, but if you have it like quite short and black, it's like cool on girls.
There we go.
But enough about mullets.
Oh, yeah, okay.
No, please. Continue.
About mullets.
More mullets.
No, it's just I watched a video about a hairdresser reacting to DIY mullets.
I've seen that on YouTube as well.
Yeah, and he kept saying that mullets are actually a very technical haircut. Like they're actually like quite complicated and layering and like blah 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 blah. He's like, no, you need to go to a hairdresser.
Anything with variable sizes is going to be a little tricky.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you would know as a native of Eastern Washington where y'all cut your own hair.
Yeah, we sure do.
It's quarantine. A lot of people are cutting their own hair.
True.
That's true. COVID hair is definitely a thing.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we do a show?
Yes. Let's get into the news. The first story was suggested by Aish. Thanks, Aish. It's the Durga Dictionary. It's new. It's out. Yay.
We've spoken about this before, haven't we?
Well, we've spoken about a lot. There's been a lot of dictionaries, but this is brand new. Durga is a language of coastal New South Wales. And of course, because it's been the International Year of Indigenous Languages, a lot of funding from the government of Australia and other countries has become available. So this is one of the fruits of it. A lot of the work was done by Kerry Boyanga, who helped develop the Durga as a language other than English program for her elementary school. It's called Durga Jaman.
Cool.
Also, her brother Wayne Donovan and also Jutta Besold, who did a thesis on Aboriginal languages of the South Coast in 2012. So
that's very cool.
This includes words, and it also includes a beginner's grammar, which is awesome.
Can you two just sort of give me, I know we've talked about it on the show before, but we've got so many episodes and I forget most things. Can one of the two of you give me a 50 words or less blow by blow of what making a dictionary actually involves?
Oh my God.
Well, in this case, according to the ABC article, it involved plowing through a lot of work done by other people. Diana Eads did a lot of work back in the 19-somethings, and it just required a lot of work to be gathered up and then verified.
So it's if you're creating a new one, right? As in, obviously the language is not new. That's a stupid thing to say. If you're creating a new dictionary for a thing that has not previously had a dictionary, the bulk of your task is research?
I mean, it could be. It could also be. So, forgive me if I'm wrong, but so Durga is spoken on the New South Wales coast, close to Bateman's Bay, I believe.
Yep.
And there are very few speakers. So sometimes people will also triangulate in situations like this with languages in the area. So if they find someone saying, "Oh, this is a Durga word," they say, "Oh, okay. Well, we know that the neighboring language has this word." So you can sort of try and verify like that sometimes.
And we also know that there are some regular sound correspondences between this language and that language. So if we know that this language, the word is blah, then we can probably guess that because there's a B to D thing, that in Durga it's da, or something like that.
Right. So you're using a bit of interpolation and a bit of extrapolation.
That's particular, like if the language doesn't have many or speakers who are able to share. But I mean, if you have a community which, when they are able to share, work is often sitting down with people and asking them what lots of words mean, finding some people in the community who are more interested in sitting down with you for long hours and asking you about words, and then like inviting them to become co-creators and try and help correct your work and things like that.
You know what did my heart good?
What?
Glottolog has an entry for Durga, and Glottolog lists the status as awakening.
Oh,
isn't that nice?
What?
I like that.
Wait, this is new. I have been, I need to check this out, because me and Claire Bowen tried to convince the Glottolog editors a while ago to use sleeping instead of extinct. And they were like, well, it's only really, and it's sort of true, it's mainly in Australia that people use the term sleeping instead of extinct. So they were like, we don't know if that, like, the rest of the world would, where do you see
Go for that.
Yeah, if like people would be confused.
Down the bottom of the page, we'll have a link on our blog becauselanguage.com.
Endangerment. No, I'm very sorry. It says extinct for the status, and then it says a comment that someone has described it as awakening.
Oh, okay. I didn't know the status versus comment. That, well, it's a step, right?
Yeah, that is it. And I think often you'll find that on Australian languages will use terms like awakening and sleeping, and Asian languages in South America. Yeah. Sorry
to get your hopes up there.
No, Hedwig, the person who can unlighten Daniel's heart.
Oh. That's okay.
Also, I was really excited about the idea that I had convinced the Glottolog editor. So something.
Oh, don't worry. We sensed that. There was a very clear moment where you were just like, "Fuck yes."
Well, it's time to press this, I think, Hedwig.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You get back in touch and be like, "Hey, a random person on the internet said the same thing I did, so that's like 2.
All right, let's go on to the next item. We've talked many times about the Google Ngram Viewer.
Oh, the funnest thing for a nerd who likes words to do.
Well, they've gotten an update.
Yay.
The new update gives us data up to 2019.
I feel like, again, I just need to do a quick, like, Dummy Ben update. There's probably a bunch of people listening who are like, yeah, the Ngram Viewer, ha 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 ha. So the Ngram Viewer is when you can search all words, basically. Yep. Like the corpus of all of the books, all of the articles that have kind of ever been written, basically.
It's since 1800 usually. And it's most books.
Google has digitized millions of books over hundreds of years, and you can search them all with a stroke of a keyboard. So you can look at, for example, when people stopped calling it the Great War and started calling it World War I.
Yeah. You can look for like funny turns. Like if you've ever been at a party and you've been like, when did we... So the one I looked up recently with Ngram Viewer is waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had a burning desire to figure out what the flip that meant and where it came from. And I used the Ngram Viewer to sort of localize it, to narrow down my search to be able to figure out where it started popping up and stuff.
My favorite search is looking for another thing coming versus another think coming.
What? How is that? What? How is that your favorite search?
Well, which one do you think is more common? Which one do you say? You've got another...
Thing.
Thing coming? I don't
What is even a think?
I don't say either of those phrases.
If you think that, boy, you've got another thing coming, or you've got another...
Oh, okay. That I say you've got another think coming.
You do.
Yep.
You are in the majority.
Wait. Wait.
So, okay, Hedvig, let's say you're my son, and
No, I know the phrase.
Okay.
I'm just entirely confused why there'd be a K there.
Because if you think that, you've got another think coming.
Oh, I thought it was going to be that like English speakers devoice at the end of thing, because they do.
You thought it was going to be a fun linguistics explanation.
Well, I think it may be helping it along a little bit, but it turns out that think is a little older, and think is also the thing that most people write, at least in the Google Ngram corpus. Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yes. I'm not sure what the holdup was. I thought that they weren't going to update it at all, so I'm surprised to see the 2019 update, but I'm very pleased.
Wait, why did you think they weren't going to update it at all?
Well, there was a legal battle with the Authors Guild, who contended that Google was unfairly putting authors' work out there without permission. And then in the USA, in about 2016, judges ruled that Google's use of snippets falls under fair use.
Yeah. 100% it does. Obviously it does. The Ngram viewer doesn't let you see entire, even paragraphs, let alone pages.
I mean, Google Books often does.
Yeah. But even still, they've got like you can't just go and find a random textbook and look at every page.
No. And the lower courts in the U.S. agreed with you, and that's why the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the case. So the Ngram viewer can continue.
Yay!
I remember it's interesting, language and lawyers. We at our department in Stockholm, we once had a lawyer come down from the law school, I guess, and just
I love that you find them so like onerous that you just like from that vile den where where the lawyers pupate out of their disgusting little pods.
They're actually in the same building as the linguists, but we never really talk to them.
They pupate in the same building as you.
And once you're in the elevator, you can clearly tell. Like the law students are always very nicely dressed, and the linguist student less so. Anyway,
that was so democratic. The linguistic students less so.
Well, I used to wear hot pants a lot, and it's not, Anyway, but we had a lawyer come down and talk to us about like, can you, if someone makes a graph in a publication and you want to show that graph in your paper, you can do it if you like use the same numbers and recreate the graph, but you can't use the particular image that they had.
Oh, so you have to re-graph the graph.
Yeah, and then you can do it because that's information.
Well, then that's not using their graph, right?
Exactly, that's information.
Yeah.
But the picture is copyrighted.
That's so... Imagine the person who would actually go to the effort of pursuing a copyright infringement for using a JPEG instead of like quickly grabbing the Excel cell data and graphing it.
Yeah. And the other thing they talked to us about was like, because we were like, we have all these like multilingual versions of like Alice in Wonderland and stuff, and we're searching through them. And she was like, that doesn't sound... Did you make that available to all of your students? And we were like, yes. They're like, please randomly arrange the sentences.
Like, Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, and then
surely Lewis Carroll is in the public domain. Surely.
Oh, sorry, it was Harry Potter as well. It was a bunch of stuff. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Alice in Wonderland would have been fine, but it was. I think we had a Harry Potter and other things.
I see. Something for which people actually give dollar fucks about.
Yeah. And she said, maybe if you rearrange the sentences, but we're like, okay, but we need to keep the order in the sentence, like that.
Do you, like, you turn to the lawyer and you're like, you do understand how language works, right?
Well, if we were only interested in frequencies of singular words,
that would work.
It would have been fine. But
you just put all the thes out the front, so it's like
No, not the words.
But no, she was very confused when we told her that what we were doing at the department. She was like, that doesn't seem good. Stop.
I delight in encountering people who give lots of fucks about copyright because they very quickly start hating me.
Yeah.
Oh dear. I think it's time to move on to the big news item.
All right, sorry, I've cleared room. I haven't eaten anything for a couple of hours.
Can I get some more coffee? I'm just going to get more coffee. I think I'm going to need it. Is that okay? I'll be super quick.
Yep. While she's doing that, I'll just say the reason why I want to talk about this is because it's easy to sidestep it, but a lot of people have been talking about this, and they've been doing it mostly from the point of view of the powerful establishment linguists and not from the point of view of everyone else. So I thought we need to talk about this, the Pinker letter.
Are we calling it the Pinker letter, not the Harper's letter?
Well, see, but that's part of the problem. But let's get to that.
Okay.
I'm back.
We'll call it the LSA Pinker debacle. How about that?
Okay. So
what's mainly about Pinker?
Just for people listening, what we are talking about is a letter that you might know as the Harper's letter, which is kind of blown up.
Well, we're not even talking about, I mean, yes, that's the starting point for many people, but of course we need to start further back with the original letter.
So, but I'm wondering if it's going to be best if we come at this from the in terms of, like, can we do a little bit of a Quentin Tarantino where we come in the middle of this narrative and then we move back to the beginning?
I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it chronological.
I think we need to do it chronologically. I think so.
All right.
Sorry.
But it's a fun idea.
It's a fun idea. So we'll call this the original letter. There was an original letter signed by about 500 or 600 linguists from the LSA, the Linguistic Society of America. It called for the removal of Dr. Steven Pinker from the list of distinguished academic fellows and the LSA's list of media experts. You can go to their website. I need a linguistic expert. Who should I talk to? And Steven Pinker was on there. And what they said was, Dr. Pinker has a history of speaking over genuine grievances and downplaying injustices, frequently by misrepresenting facts, and at the exact moments when Black and brown people are mobilizing against systemic racism and for crucial changes. So what's wrong with Steven Pinker? It's not that he's a conservative guy. He might not even be. It's not because I disagree with his politics. What's wrong with Steven Pinker?
I don't actually know Steven Pinker from Bar of Soap.
Mm-hmm.
In the public eye, I think he's most well known for writing books about stylistics and how to write, isn't he?
Okay.
Like, outside of linguistics, that's what I think he's most well known for.
And I think a lot of people remember his work from The Language Instinct. That was, a lot of us cut our teeth on that one.
Yeah. So about, child language development.
So the contentions are that Pinker's public stances, especially on Twitter, are incompatible with the LSA's statement on racial justice. For example, he dismisses the reality that Black people are killed disproportionately by police.
Hang on, is Pinker part of the IDW?
Yeah, I think he is part of the intellectual dark web.
Oh, okay.
What is IDW?
This now makes a lot more sense to me. So this is a acronym I only came across recently. Like, it was a thing that I kind of knew about, but I didn't have a word for. Basically, it's the collection of mostly conservative intellectuals. It stands for intellectual dark web. And we're talking about like the Sam Harrises of the world and the Jordan Peterson and Steven Pinker. People who just kind of keep casting themselves as these like hyper smart outsiders who are trying to fight the good fight against like political correctness and weird postmodern Marxism and all their classic little like bugbears with what's going on in like public discourse and stuff. It's like a whole collection of that kid in high school who was really, really smart, but just no one liked.
Yeah, he's the well, actually guy, isn't he? I mean, well, actually, white people get killed by police too. Well, actually, it wasn't 6 women who got murdered by that incel. It was 4 women and 2 men. It's like, well, why would you bring that up at this time? Why is this a part of the story that's important for you to tell?
Yeah.
So the contention is that he misrepresents work that other people have done in a way that may not be racist, but helps racists and is capable of doing harm.
I would argue that taking that stance at this time is definitely racist. Like, I don't think we need to be sort of circumspect about that.
Okay.
If you, in the same way that someone who like, this was mentioned in the article that Hedvig shared about cancel culture on Slack, which I thought was really good. Like, if you were a person who in like July of 2020 said, I support J.K. Rowling, right? You might not be saying it literally, but you are definitely saying, I do not support trans rights. right? Like that is a thing that you are doing and saying definitively by associating or aligning yourself in a certain way. And so Steven Pinker going, well, actually it was 2 people killed, like, or whatever, that's super racist, I think.
Or misogynist, yeah.
So I think people at this point might be asking, what does this have to do with the LSA and what does it have to do with linguistics? And I think it's good to clarify that the LSA had taken an official policy that they were going to be an inclusive organization. And as an organization and as a workplace and as a public figure, there is both the topic matter that you're talking about, but it's also how you are serving the community, both your audience and your peers, and how you are making students, in this case, many of them, but also other researchers feel included and validated. And this is where the thing gets tricky, because if the LSA hadn't explicitly said that they were going to have these policies, you could argue that it matters less what Pinker does that isn't linguistics. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But because the point of this paper is that the LSA had explicitly said that they were going to have this policy and that they wanted to validate their community members in this way. And therefore, I've seen people phrase this as a matter of representative democracy, and I kind of almost like it. It's like there's a young generation of linguists in Australia, I was about to say, in the United States, who feel that Pinker doesn't represent them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the gist of my objection. I am a signatory to the original letter, and it's not because I don't like the guy's politics or his linguistic stances, but because I have been aware of what he's been doing. And I ask myself, is this a good person to represent linguistics? Because the LSA is saying, this is a good person to represent linguistics, to represent public linguistics. And I said, this is the field that I am devoting my professional life and my personal life to promote. Is Steven Pinker a good person to represent linguistics, to represent public linguistics, to represent me? My answer was no. And I have seen nothing in the time since then from Pinker's reactions. I have seen nothing that would dissuade me. In fact, the view for me has become stronger.
Well, I mean, a move like this, it's so... The reality is, from what I am seeing from intellectuals adjacent to Steven Pinker, is that a move like this actually kind of works for Pinker, because they are always trying to cloak themselves in this victimized outsider identity.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is part of their personal brand now, and as fucked up as it is, they actually do fairly well off it, right?
Mm.
People like Sam Harris have fucking huge listenerships. Like I froth at the mouth at the idea of having a listenership like fucking Sam Harris, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And a huge part of that is because places are like, I don't want you to speak. I don't like your politics. I don't like the things you have to say, or the fervency with which you are saying these supposedly reasonable things given the context of what's going on in the world at this time. And their fucking listenership goes up. Like, this... I definitely think Steven Pinker should have been delisted from the list of like people to chat to about linguistics, but I do not for a second concede that this is materially hurting Steven Pinker. Like, fuck. More people know about him rather than less.
No, there are no consequences for Steven Pinker. Nobody was asking for him to quit his job or to get fired. They were just saying, let's delist the guy from the list.
And no one has a right to be like a luminary for an organization. That's not a right that anyone gets.
Yeah, that's an honor that you get bestowed and that can be taken away. That's another thing that I liked in the HuffPost article we talked about earlier by Michael Hobbs. He talks about how there's very different for public figures. They sort of seem to think that they can speak without getting why am I struggling with words today? They can
because you speak like 5 languages, probably.
Them. No, that's not why. I mainly just speak one, English. But public figures, exactly, they don't really hurt from this debate. There's no one stopping them to say things. Apart from some of Donald Trump's tweets getting fact-checked, generally people can say whatever they want on that platform. And if you are concerned about the so-called little people, like random employees who got fired or something, what you should talk, especially in the United States, what you should be questioning is how you can have a system where people can get fired that easily.
Mm-hmm. on the note of free speech or free exchange of ideas, I think it is impossible to remove someone's freedom of speech today.
Yes, that's such a good thing to say.
It is, however, possible to keep a powerful public intellectual from using the channels of publicity that they have heretofore had unfettered access to, and they just hate that idea.
They really, really do.
Yeah.
Which takes us to part 2, the Harper's letter. So there was a letter published by and signed to by about 150, I didn't count, luminaries, public intellectuals, writers, authors, Wynton Marsalis, Noam Chomsky.
There was some really surprising names on it.
Who'd you notice?
Malcolm Gladwell signed this letter.
Margaret Atwood.
Yeah, I was surprised.
John McWhorter, who we have had on our show. Steven Pinker, of course. That's interesting. And J.K. Rowling. So I think we kind of know what's up.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a quote from the article. The free exchange of information and ideas, the lifeblood of a liberal society, is daily becoming more constricted. While we have come to expect this on the radical right, censoriousness is also spreading more widely in our culture, an intolerance of opposing views, a vogue for public shaming and ostracism, and the tendency to dissolve complex policy issues in a blinding moral certainty going on. This stifling atmosphere will ultimately harm the most vital causes of our time. The restriction of debate, whether by a repressive government or an intolerant society, invariably hurts those who lack power, and makes everyone less capable of democratic participation. The way to defeat bad ideas is by exposure, argument, and persuasion, not by trying to silence or wish them away. Okay, thoughts?
Okay. Yeah, like, where do we want to start with how fucking wrong every level of this is? Like, there's like 11 different things that you could come at this from a different fucking orthogonal direction and tear it apart.
They're not being silenced. They're being taken away massive platforms that was given to them by someone. That's not the same as being silenced. And it's also, they think what they're talking about is so interesting and so important, that their opinions are so interesting. They're often very boring and uninteresting opinions. Like, there are more interesting debates to have. And that's okay. They can have uninteresting opinions, but it doesn't mean I have to listen to them.
I would like to take issue with the last sentence. The way to defeat bad ideas is by exposure, argument, and persuasion. I think that is a good way to defeat some bad ideas when harm is unlikely. When harm is on the table, I don't think exposure is a good idea. You know, we sometimes say that sunlight is the best disinfectant, but as Lindy West pointed out, sometimes sunlight doesn't disinfect. Sometimes sunlight helps things to grow.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so why don't we zero in here on like one example? And I think we should probably just go to the J.K. Rowling example, A, because everyone knows about it, and B, because she signed the letter and she was a huge factor in like, this was one of the most recent examples. I have had students and other staff members at my school come up to me and basically, because I'm like known as that lefty guy who will always fight about everything or whatever.
You are that?
And so
it's so
like,
good that we're on a podcast together, all of us. I enjoy it.
Man.
And so people come up to me and be like, "Bruh, yeah, like, look how everyone's cheating J.K. Rowling." And I'm like, fucking so?
She's super rich. She's going to be fine. She doesn't need to be...
Right.
Yeah.
Here's my thing with J.K. Rowling, right? Specifically in relation to how that letter was written, okay? That letter goes... these smart people should not be censored by a faceless mob of like, what's the word they use? The faceless mob of something, right? To which I would say, okay, J.K. Rowling, stop fucking tweeting things then.
And you know what? For me, it's not the controversial opinion. It's the harm. Because this creates an environment where trans people, already having a tough time, are having their...
Oh, let's just acknowledge this. What she is saying is not a controversial opinion. A huge proportion of the world, I know this because a whole bunch of them come up to me to try and needle me with it, think the way she does. She is not some sort of fucking crazy... Yeah. This is what I don't accept about this Harper's letter or the Pinker letter or anything like this idea that the world has moved on and these people are like fighting the good fight as the last dying breed of the noble fucking warriors who are keeping this all alive or whatever. Yeah. Most of the world agrees with their bullshit, which is why there are these huge social movements taking place to try and tear this shit down.
Yeah.
They're casting themselves as like, ooh, when we say controversial things, we get censored. And it's like, no, when you say shitty things that most people agree with and that serves nothing and does actual harm, a significant portion of the world who are starting to see that harm go, hey, how about you fuck right off, you old, dumb piece of shit.
Which is why these complaints about censoriousness really ring hollow. It's only censorious when lefties criticize conservatives or intellectual dark web folks, but it's not censorious when people are persecuted, when there's harm done.
I'm gonna cool off just a little bit, right? And try and like cool my jets and kind of go, I get it, right? I get the fear that some people in that world have, because I was like that, right? And I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this podcast used to say be a prescriptivist, and then they've listened to a bunch of our stuff and then they've gone, actually, you know what? That's not a cool thing to do. Like, I can see how that is actually got some fairly problematic components. I'm not going to do that anymore, right? We've all been on that journey to a certain extent or a lesser extent, right? And so once upon a time, you definitely would have found me being the actually guy who's talking about like only the intellectual side of things and just trying to like prove everything with data and all that kind of stuff. So I get the fear because I was once there, and yeah, absolutely, right? In some sort of 1984 world where everyone gets censored, some terrible shit can go down. Is that where we are? No. Are we trying to get away from a world where a very small number of very white, very male media gatekeepers have had total control on everything for centuries? Yes, we are. And you know what? In that process, we probably are going to fuck it up and overcorrect, and we're going to silence some people who maybe don't deserve to be silenced. But guess what? When you try and fix a system like this, you will not be able to do it perfectly. There will be instances that I'm sure people will delight in finding and be like, ha, see, this proves it. This proves that you're all a bunch of fucks and you're trying to censor everyone. And it's like, okay, fair enough. But there is no other way that I can see in this world that we live in to try and break these systems down. Yes, there are going to be fuck-ups sometimes. Is the alternative of just everyone fucking sticking with the status quo and disenfranchised people, staying marginalized and staying harmed? Fuck that. No way. I will silence some rich white fucks for a while and they can just deal with it, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I keep coming back to this other idea. Exchange of ideas is good in general. But why is it good? Well, one of the reasons is that if we have a free exchange of ideas, then it helps the good ideas circulate and the bad ideas drop out. But what if they don't? What if some exchange, as we've seen, I think we've had ample opportunity to see how the exchange of some ideas, like hateful ideas, don't lead to the good ideas floating to the top. Sometimes they make bad ideas float to the top. And this is an attempt to make bad ideas float to the top by disguising it in a good idea.
I think I worry that by trying to make a vaguely utilitarian argument, which is kind of what that sounded like to me, that we are still fundamentally missing the point a little bit, which is it's just about power, right? For me, anyway. I look at this situation and all I see is a power struggle. I can't speak to whether that is accurate or not, but that's certainly the only thing I see. And I see a bunch of very powerful people who are with their teeth and their fingernails trying to hold on to positions of very significant power.
And who feel entitled, who feel that these are not rights that have been given to them. These are rights that they have by virtue of just existing.
Yeah.
Well, all of this put the LSA, the Linguistic Society of America, in a rather unenviable position. Do you go with the request and anger established intellectuals, Or do you ignore it and anger a whole bunch of early career researchers and linguists of color?
You try and split the difference and you do it badly and you piss everyone off. That's my guess.
Oh, how'd you know?
Because if they'd done the right thing, you would have said it. And if they'd done the really wrong thing, you would have said it.
Yeah, the LSA released a statement saying, the Linguistic Society of America is committed to intellectual freedom and professional responsibility. It is not the mission of the society to control the opinions of its members nor their expression. Inclusion and civility, oh, my favorite word, are crucial to productive scholarly work, and inclusion means hearing, not necessarily accepting, all points of view, even those that may be objectionable to some.
I have to say, by the way, that the first letter, the open letter that we talked about at the beginning, it's quite polite. Mm-hmm. It's not like a vile name calling. I found it to be, quite polite. And what was the word they used? Civil.
Right, like it was the institutional version of like letting someone go after a long time at the organization who you still really like, but you know, times have changed kind of thing. Like it wasn't like you're fired, get the fuck out. Like it, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't mention Pinker. And as a result, Pinker and the intellectuals got to take a victory lap. I think the LSA really kind of sent a message that they aren't willing to take the side of the black and brown researchers or early career researchers.
I think what they very clearly said was, we would really like to pay lip service to these movements, but we really don't want to do anything that's actually hard.
Well, they tried to clarify later, quote, the recent message from the executive committee to the membership, despite alternative interpretations placed in it by some, was not intended to be a rejection of the open letter, but rather an affirmation of our collective values and principles.
Oh, trying to split the difference again. Fuck off.
They say in that statement as well that they're going to return to this issue at the next annual meeting and that they have assigned 2 task forces.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah,
spicy.
so that'll be interesting. When is the next annual meeting?
It's in January, but who knows what it's going to look like.
One giant Zoom call with a bunch of people yelling at the same time.
Oh my God.
Okay. Well, let's go on to the next piece. The next thing that happened was, if this was conceived as a way of silencing the public intellectuals, it did not work. They had heaps of media exposure because they have the biggest megaphones.
Told you, this is right into their playbook. Look how we've been singled out again. Aren't we always victimized like this for simply having our intellectual ideas?
Yeah.
Do you want to know a good Swedish word?
What?
Yep.
Offerkofta. It means the victim's cardigan. Like, it's the thing you put on when you play the victim.
Oh, right. The victim's...
That is good.
Yeah.
Can you say it slowly so I hear all the syllables?
Offer.
Yeah.
Which is victim.
Oh.
Kofta, which is cardigan.
I like it.
So in politics, when people do this, we say that they put on offerkofta.
Well, that's what Steven Pinker did. The New York Times devoted a whole piece to him, including some quotes by John McWhorter. Pinker described his critics as speech police who, quote, have trolled through my writings to find offensive lines and adjectives.
Did he at all respond to the specific points in the original letter?
When he referred to the original letter, he said that he didn't recognize, he only recognized one of the names, so they couldn't have been very important, could they?
Oh, yeah, he said that too, which is just rude. But like the actual points, like there are like however many.
I think that's I think that's his way of saying
6 points.
Because none of these names mean anything to me, I don't deign to address the content.
Yeah, I think he didn't deign. Okay, then things got kind of interesting. Rickard Dockham on Twitter noted that the LSA media page got changed. That Steven Pinker, from being on the top of the page under General, got dropped to the bottom of the page under General. They just kind of moved him without saying anything.
And then if you go to the media expert page right now, it says that as of July 17th, they have taken down the list, and that if you want to get a hold of someone to talk, you should contact the LSA executive director, and that when the task force has finished their work, and presumably when this annual meeting has happened in January, they might put the list up again after having reconsidered it.
So do you know what that reminds me of? A lot of counties across the states have been taking down racist statues just to stop there being like a violent confrontation, right? So like before even like totally. Like but they're doing a similar thing, right? Like they're taking them down and basically kind of going, until all this blows over, we've just decided to like blah blah blah.
Putting them in storage so they can put them up later.
They're not taking them down.
Yeah, well, I don't think any of them have been. I'm sure there's a couple of examples of counties that are brave enough to be like, yep, fuck slave owners, but most of them have kind of been going, because of safety concerns, we have removed the statue for the time being, blah, 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 which is exactly what it sounds like the LSA is doing, which is basically like, we'll put the list back up when everyone stops yelling at us.
Imagine being the LSA and having this whole thing erupt underneath you.
Well, see, this is the thing. Like, it actually could have been a very straightforward move, and I think they kind of made the dumb call in a context where we're seeing like huge brands like Nestle and stuff, and the football team in Washington changed their name and all this other stuff. Like, really, you had a lot of capital and momentum there to just basically back the letter, to just kind of go, yep, cool, fair cop, given what's going on in the world and everyone else doing the same thing, we're going to do it too.
Or just refute it and say, we don't think the charges are strong enough.
If you wanted to.
So doesn't this whole debacle stem from... So on June 3rd of this year, the LSA issued a statement on racial justice. This is this is the reason for the open letter. And if they wanted to keep Pinker on the list, they could have just said, no, we're only going to talk about research and linguistics and studies. We're not going to at all talk about any kind of care that we could serve our community in terms of inclusion. In that case,
but that's really difficult for linguistics.
It is, but like that could be a choice they could have made, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what they did, right?
They went down that path, and then they're just not committed to it.
If you talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. No pun intended.
That's the old show. So what do you think should happen now? I think that the LSA media rethink is a really good idea.
Probably.
I think it's a good idea as long as they're not putting the list in storage, which I suspect they might be.
Yeah. Hey, did you guys see that the Harper letter had Chomsky on it, by the way? I just noticed.
Yes.
Yeah, when the left has gone too far for Chomsky, you know.
This is what I mean.
Noticed. Sorry, I was just like, fair enough.
You know, I can think of a lot of things that would make a good linguistic media person, but I can only think of a few things that would make someone a bad one. And some of those things are like getting the facts wrong and refusing to correct them.
Or just getting as defensive and like douchey as he currently does. That line about like, I only recognized one of the names. For me, that's like case closed.
I'm more convinced than ever.
Even if some of the people who signed their Harper letter agreed with him, if when they saw him say that, surely they would have been like, I agree with him. But like, even I don't want to associate with someone who says that. I
wonder if anybody's having second thoughts. It's like, you know, I am for intellectual freedom and diversity, but... Some
people have... We should note that a number of people who signed the Harper's letter, when they saw the other people they were like shoulder to shoulder with, were like, oh, fuck that, no way.
The other thing that I think would be a disqualifier is just repeatedly striving to dismiss concerns of social justice. I think there's something else we got to say, and that is we got to talk about cancel culture, because that's what this is about. Look, cancel culture is not real. It is simply people thinking and talking, reevaluating other people's work and seeing how it fits with our new understanding. And these established intellectuals can't stand it. This is why I say that fear of cancellation is such a giveaway. It's not cancellation. It's sharing opinions, which is supposed to be free speech, which is what they claim to be for, but I don't think they are, only when it benefits them.
Well, if I'm going to be for a microsecond generous, I think it's a bunch of people who have become so accustomed to and comfortable with humongous platforms that they kind of forget that the rest of us fucking schlebs just toil away here on the fringes. Like, okay, so you will no longer be published at the publishing house that you were published at, say, J.K. Rowling, which hasn't even happened, by the way. But let's say it does. Do we think
it happened
for
to the
second...
Gillian Phillip who wrote I Stand with J.K. Rowling? She got fired from her publisher.
Right. And I'm going to say fair enough, right? Like, if you are a person who wants to publicly endorse someone like that and you publish books for kids, right, and your publisher's like, well, that's not politics I agree with, then yeah, absolutely they can fire you. And if you're good enough, someone else will hire you. If J.K. Rowling gets who publishes Rowling? Is it Penguin?
Don't know.
It's the Bloomsbury, I think.
Right. Like, let's say Bloomsbury drops J.K. Rowling, which, will never ever happen. But let's say they do. Penguin or Harper's or some other person will be there in a microsecond.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling's going to be fine.
Don't feel bad for these people. Don't. Yeah.
Don't ever feel bad for rich people. That's just a rule.
You guys remember a couple of months ago when, Ellen and everyone on Twitter was like, I feel so alone in my big mansion. And people were like, you realize that you're on Twitter saying that you feel alone and sad in your mansion and people are like not able to pay their medical bills and getting evicted.
People are dying. Dying.
Don't feel bad for rich people.
Ever.
How hard
just
is it?
Just don't do it. Like, they will sleep fine on their giant mattress stuffed with money.
And yet this kind of consequence is considered to be somehow restricting the range of acceptable opinion or something. Why don't we think of it as just losing in the marketplace of ideas?
Yeah. That's a great point.
Because somehow that's only considered acceptable when conservatives win and not when liberals win.
Well, it's not unlike the actual stock market, Daniel. The powerful rich people get to make the rules.
Well, guilty as charged. The best take on this, I think, is from James Harbeck at Sesquiotic. Listen to this. Free speech is like the free land colonizers went west across North America for. It wasn't free. They just didn't think of the people who bore the burden of their invasions as worthy of account.
Yep. That absolutely, I think, yeah.
Final thoughts?
The only thing I would say that we haven't mentioned is that the counter letter, which to the Harper's letter, I mean, the objective. Okay, so let me pull it up here. So the objective is a great collection of journalist, writers, and thinkers from communities of color and marginalized communities, and they basically wrote a letter response. Like, they engaged in letter discourse, which is whatever, but it needed to be done, basically, in the same way that the LSA had to do something sort of in response. So too did I think the Harper's letter deserve a reply. And this is a really good one, and it is to do with specifically the very racist. It's essentially a much longer read that talks about exactly what you've just said, Daniel, about the idea of like free land not being free, but actually there being people there. And it talks about that in terms of the fact that there is, the bulk of the world who is non-white and whose voices just absolutely are not breaking through because of the stranglehold that some of these very large, very powerful intellectuals have over that discourse.
Is this the one called A More Specific Letter on Justice and Open Debate?
That's the one. I've just put it in Slack.
Yeah.
That's my final thought. If anyone just really is like me, perhaps, and they find in their day-to-day life, maybe in their family or in their workplace, that everyone just loves bringing just righty fucking nonsense their way to try and piss you off, give that response letter a read. It's going to really, that one and the Huffington Post article, actually, I think that Hedvig shared with us, which we'll also chuck the link up for. If you read those two, you will be able to just smack down any Johnny-come-lately, oh, look at what the left is doing now, douchebag in your life very comprehensively.
Hedvig, your final thoughts?
Don't feel bad for poor people, for rich people. Feel bad for poor people. There are some cases that can be discussed, like they discussed in the HuffPost, about random non-public figures potentially faring some kind of harm. Poor people and non-public figures have been censored for ages. That's how the world has worked for most of the time. The way we can talk about that is to strengthen workers' rights and unions. It's not to say that any opinions by public figures should be there unquestioned.
My final thought is, I've been around the block a few times and I've seen this happen before. I've seen it happen in atheism with some of the same players, including Jerry Coyne. Atheism in 2006, 2007 was fun. It was like, hey, flying spaghetti monster and shit like that.
What was his name? The YouTuber, The Amazing Atheist. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. But then when Rebecca Watson told men to avoid following women around at conferences and cornering them in elevators, so this was Elevator Gate, it ripped the lid off of the misogyny that was bubbling around in the new atheism. Atheism had members who said that atheism needed to be more inclusive for people of color, for women. But the general membership was derisive and dismissive, and the leaders, like Richard Dawkins, who incidentally canceled Rebecca Watson, the fedoras won.
Yeah.
That was the end result. The fedoras won. As a result, women and people of color didn't feel comfortable in atheism. It stayed old and white, and it failed. New atheism is no longer a thing.
Yeah, it's super relevant, right? It could not be more irrelevant in terms of a movement with social capital. Like fucking Visco girls have way more play.
Yeah. I think linguistics might be a different area. Like, to be an atheist, you just say, "Oh, I'm an atheist, I'll join a club." Whereas linguists, it's a professional thing. But I'm worried about the future of linguistics. I'm worried about its relevance.
Yeah. And I think I tried to say earlier, I don't know if I phrased myself well, but again, people might ask, well, these are linguists and this is a linguistics organization. What does it matter what Pinker says that outside of linguistics? But it is also a community and a workplace and a place where employers and organizations try and care for their members. And that's where representation and equal treatment come in. And that is why the LSA felt prompted to write that statement in the beginning about racial justice, because they felt that they had a duty towards their members. And this is what comes from that.
Well, my solution then, and this may seem kind of paradoxical, but I don't mean it that way. My solution is to support the LSA. This is the incident that reminded me to renew my membership. And we all need to support the LSA because this is a fight that we all need to be involved in.
Can either of you think of many realms in which this sort of overarching systemic reform doesn't touch? Like, I find the notion that there's like regions of society that can be above or free from this, or that don't have to tackle this and engage with this. I'm coming up blank, to be honest. Like, what part of our world doesn't in some way or another reflect, reinforce, or have the capacity to address the huge systemic fucking issues in our world?
I think that's totally right. Like, my ex-boyfriend, who was a physicist, when he was doing his master's in physics, they had a course called like gender in physics. And a lot of students were very annoyed that they had to take that course and were like, physics has nothing to do with gender. And then you just like look around in the department that they're in and compare like the wages of their tenured professors. And you ask, what, are you sure? Because if physics and maths is interested in the neutral and equal exchange of ideas, then the fact that people don't quote certain authors as much as others and don't pay them as well is a problem, right?
That's what I mean. Like, there's no... Look, if someone who is listening can think of a part of the world that is like above this or separate from this, by all means, hit me up. I would love to hear it, because I cannot think of much.
Well, thank you both. I was a little nervous about getting into this topic because I know that it's the kind of topic that doesn't make anybody happy, but I'm glad that I was able to discuss it with the both of you. So thanks. It's time for Words of the Week. How I love them. I know you do too.
Well, I was already fired the fuck up, so let's keep the train rolling. Choo-choo!
Griot.
Griot?
Griot.
Griot. Is it like a riot?
With a G.
Grief riot.
It's a G riot. No, it's not. So one of the people who passed this last week was the late Representative John Lewis, congressman in the USA. He was one of many black folks who were beaten by police on their march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And if you saw the movie Selma, you saw that being depicted.
Rough.
Now, in celebrating him with a tweet, Stacey Abrams, does that name ring any bells for you non-Americans?
Nope.
Yes.
Okay, go.
She ran for a Democratic candidate.
Yes, she ran for governor of the state of Georgia. She didn't win because the other candidate, Brian Kemp, engaged in voter suppression tactics, and those didn't get investigated because the person whose job it was to oversee the election was...
his brother.
Brian Kemp himself.
Oh, Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah. We should also say that she's a black woman, maybe.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
So she's gone on to start Fair Fight Action, an organization that works to register voters and ensure that all the votes get counted. Here's her tweet. God has welcomed Rep. John Lewis home, defender of justice, champion of right, our conscience. He was a griot of this modern age. And I looked at that and I said, griot, what a super word. What is it?
Is it like a version of GOAT? You know how GOAT gets used for greatest of all time?
No, it's not an acronym.
Oh.
Other guesses?
Is it just an old word that means like polymath?
That's a good guess too. A little closer. Here's what it is. This is in my dictionary on my computer. A member of a class of traveling poets, musicians, and storytellers who maintain a tradition of oral history in parts of West Africa.
Wow.
Griot.
Oh, wait, I knew that. I've heard that word before. Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah, because I was looking up an oral history project on Senegal. And they talked about griot. Yeah. But that was like 6 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Well, a griot could be a musician or an entertainer, somebody who knows the history, who knows genealogies, a storyteller. The dictionary that I had listed bard as a good synonym, but I think that maybe troubadour would be the right word.
That's where I was going as well. Or gleeman.
I'd never heard that one before.
Yeah, that's from a fantasy series I like.
But don't those all sound like you have to have music. I don't think griot needs to be music, right?
Well, I don't know that John Lewis was a musical person, to my knowledge. He was, however, a civil rights legend, somebody you knew about, even if you didn't know much about civil rights. There are a lot of people who function as institutional memory, and he was one. There are even photos of him turning up at cosplay conventions, wearing that same overcoat that he wore that day, and taking children on a march around the place.
That is so fucking cool.
I know.
Oh man, what a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So John Lewis, I've enjoyed reading more about his life, and he will be missed. Okay, next one. Revenge, bedtime procrastination.
I can guess what this is.
Yeah.
I invented this. So this comes from a tweet by Daphne K. Lee. The tweet is, learned a very relatable term today. 报复性熬夜. Revenge, bedtime procrastination, a phenomenon in which people who don't have much control over their daytime life refuse to sleep early.
Yeah, I saw this.
In order to regain some sense of freedom during late night hours.
Even if it ruins them for the following day.
Even then.
Yeah, don't care. Yeah. That's me in City Skylines.
My one recently has been Stardew Valley. Holy fuck.
Is it good?
Oh, really? You're still playing that? Sorry,
I've
that's
plowed
not
hundreds and hundreds of hours into exponentially growing the profit margins of my little farm.
Aww.
But like in exactly the context of this phrase unit of just like, fuck you, I'll stay up until 1 a.m. farming turnips if I want to.
Because nobody tells me what to do.
Exactly. And Hedvig, I'm sure yours is like, I will get this traffic interchange perfect.
I used to call this retaliatory time wasting.
Yeah, walkways. I love seeing my little citizens walking on my walkways and have them walk all over the city. I just want to have a city where there are no cars.
Can you do that? Can you pull it off? Have you managed to bring on the utopian pedestrian dream?
Not fully, because like shops still require deliveries.
Yes.
And stuff like that. But everyone who's like going to work, a fair amount of them, walking or taking the metro. It's lovely.
Excellent. I love it. I support you creating a foot-based utopia.
Can anyone think of any other revenge items?
I mean, obviously revenge porn comes to mind, but that's super gross.
I didn't want to go there. Okay, say no more. Any others?
Revenge.
I can only think of one more, and it has to do with Princess Diana.
What?
Haircut?
Nope.
No.
On the day when it broke that Prince Charles had cheated on her, she went out in this black dress that promptly got dubbed the revenge dress.
Yes, I've heard about that. Yeah.
What? I will never understand Britain.
She
She wore a black dress. Oh, what a cutting revenge that was, Gerald.
Well, it was pretty hot.
Good. Like as a royal, that's the kind of like expression you have. I think that's true.
Well, yeah. Apparently, it had been sitting in her closet for 3 years, and she was like, "Oh, I can't wear that. That's just too." Yeah, well, time to wear it.
There you go.
So, okay, what do you want the third word to be? Crisis fatigue or toilet plume?
Toilet plume.
Toilet plume.
Now that we live in a COVID age, we are recognizing all the ways in which we are disgusting and have always been disgusting. And this is one.
This is, by the way, just I don't know if this is true for you, Daniel, for both Ben and well, actually, all three people on this show have a partner who is a doctor, but two of us have partners who are medical doctors. And do you also get it, Daniel, where like if you were to say that to your partner, you would immediately be like, I have always known how fucking disgusting human beings are.
I actually knew about the toilet plume because I have a friend who is a bit germophobic, and several years ago when I was at her house and they all had the stomach flu, she was like, during this week at least, please put the toilet seat down when you toilet lid.
So in case anybody's having trouble following, it turns out that when you flush the toilet, it sends billions of aerosolized toilet particles into the air. And this has always been the case, but nobody cared until there was articles popping up last week saying, some of those particles might be coronavirus particles, and they stay in the air for a really long time.
Yeah, because coronavirus sheds into the feces. So if you poop, you send those things out in the air. The next person walks into the stall. Yeah.
And if you're in a place like the United States, which is just on fire with coronavirus, this is a very real concern.
Yep. The New York Times article, quoting here, scientists have found that in addition to clearing out whatever business you've left behind, flushing a toilet can generate a cloud of aerosol droplets that rises nearly 3 feet or 1 meter. These droplets may linger in the air long enough to be inhaled by a shared toilet's next user or land on surfaces in the bathroom. In a similar vein, the Mythbusters guys found that toilet plume aerosols were all over everything in a bathroom, including toothbrushes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Because toothbrushes are in bathrooms.
I was looking at an article by David Johnson from 2017. Here's the title. Persistence of bowl water contamination during sequential flushes of contaminated toilets. Contamination, one of the results was that contamination still was present 24 flushes post-contamination, although it says less than 1 log.
Love
it. Also, the Straight Dope cited the work of Charles Jerba, a professor at the University of Arizona, who said that significant quantities of microbes floated around the bathroom for at least 2 hours after each flush. However, the toilet seat was the least contaminated of 15 household locales studied, and this is the quote from Dr. Jerba, if an alien came from space and studied the bacterial counts, the professor says, he would probably conclude that he should wash his hands in your toilet and crap in your sink.
Yep, makes sense.
Armed with this new knowledge, are you going to start lowering the seat before you flush?
I just thought that this should be a thing we can solve with engineering, surely. Like, toilets should be such that when you press the button, it lowers the seat. Or they should be like
I would put it out there that Japan has probably already fixed this.
Right. And also a lot of toilets on airplanes and trains have the button for flushing behind the lid.
Ah, there you go. There's a real fucking smart piece of design, isn't there?
That is good.
Yeah, because I was about to invent this whole thing and I told Steve about it and he was like, oh, yeah, you know about the train toilets? And I was like, oh, fuck. Yeah, of course someone started
this. you were figuring out servos and stuff. That's the kind of engineering I love the most, where you force people to do a thing through placement. It's so good.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten any better at closing the lid. What I do now is I flush the can and then I run screaming out of the room.
I'll be perfectly honest. I'm just a filthy pig. And I don't mean that in the literal sense, like I don't wipe feces all over the place or anything, but like in terms of my own sanctity around cleanliness to do with like if I'm at home for 24 hours, right? And I'm not going to go out into the world, I'm not going to meet people, I'm not going to go to work or anything like that. Oh man, do my hygiene standards just fall off a cliff. because like if I'm going out there and I'm shaking hands with people and stuff, I should absolutely have clean hands because that's what a good, decent human does. But if I'm just staying at home, I don't care if I have terrible breath and I'm covered in microparticles of my own feces, whatever. It's only me.
Because we are revolting and always have been.
Yeah, and I am particularly so.
I actually don't. That doesn't happen to me because I think I had a midwife nurse as a mom, and you just get instilled those things like very early. And also, if you're a girl, you get like UTIs a lot easier.
Yep. Absolutely.
And this is the cause, yourself or your partner, not So there's few things that scare me as much as UTIs. I hate them.
They are
the worst.
awful things.
Really,
on that uplifting note.
So, griot, revenge, bedtime procrastination, and toilet plume are words of the week. Let's just get to one comment from last episode. Stephen from New York City via email, hello@becauselanguage.com. Stephen says, having heard Blur's Day mentioned as a word of the week in the recent episode, I thought I might share this ditty that I had written up even before I learned that Blur's Day was something trending on all the things. Ahem. In this particular time, when many people are furloughed, out of work, or working from home, but even then, probably only kind of working, it's easy to lose track of what day it is, so I thought I'd post a reminder. If today is Mundane Day, that means tomorrow will be Blur's Day, and the day after that is Weary's Day, oddly pronounced Wearsday, for reasons no one knows. And that means yesterday must have been Tuesday, because it felt like 2 days in one. Or were both of the last 2 days Tuesday and felt like 1 day in two. Every week there's also a flyby day, but week to week it's uncertain which 2 days it will fall between. The most unpredictable day, however, is the very rare Matters Day. The key to retaining your sanity is to make the most of each Matters Day. The problem is you usually don't realize it's Matters Day until it's nearly over. Thank you, Stephen.
That was lovely.
Yeah, it's very nice.
I would be willing to wager that a bunch of people who listened to today's show, given that it was basically a hour-long rant of everything we had a problem with to do with a series of letters.
Oh, sorry about that.
You probably have some reactions, and we would love to engage with them. And you can do that on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Mastodon, and Patreon if you are a patron. We are Because Lang Pod, all of the places. And if you are particularly old school, and I know some of you lovely cats are, hello@becauselanguage.com is where you can draft a delightful little email for us. Please also, if you like our podcast, go ahead and tell a bunch of people. My favourite podcasts, without fail, have always been the result of people telling me to listen to a cool, interesting podcast. So do that favour for some of your friends. And if you really, really feel like it, we would love for you to leave a review in any of the places where you can leave a review for our podcast. Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Stitcher, all those places. Go nuts. Crazy. Love it.
This is a Patreon episode that goes out to our patrons on Patreon, and we would like to send a special thanks to everyone who supports us there. And if this does get released to our general audience, you can also go on Patreon and become a Patreon.
This is how I think of it. This is how I think of it, Hedvig. This is an episode for the finest stallions and thoroughbreds in our stable. But later, we might then free this episode into the wild for those beautiful wild Brumbies and Mustangs to enjoy as well.
Sure, that's a lovely metaphor. Thank you. So let's just thank the people who are within our stable. We have... I can't think of enough horses to cover all these people, so I'm just going to say their names.
Don't do it.
No. They are Termy, Crispy, Lissa, The Major, Matt, Whitney, Damien, Chris L. We have more than one Chris. Helen, Jack, Kitty, Lord Mortis, Elias, Michael, Larry, Bin, Christopher, Dustin, Andy, Anna, Nigel, Bob, Kate, Jen, Christelle, Nasrin, Aish, Kaylee, yeah, and Emma.
Our music is written and performed by Drew Kraplianov, and you can hear him in a couple of bands, Ryan Bino and Didion's Bible. I'd like to thank you, patrons, very much for listening. Catch you next time. Because Language.
Bye-bye.
I'll find a way to end that, and now here's the transitional music.
Beep. boop, 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 boop.
Wait, so are we still doing kids learning language?
No.
We're going to roll that shit over.
Okay. I was going to
Because
say.
it's
We
time.
do not
I was
have.
like, oh, fuck. All right,
was the topic.
sunshine.
No.
All right.